Hello, hello. Happy Monday. I hope everybody has had a fantastic weekend this past weekend. Let me give it one more second to make sure everything is connected and working. It looks like we are good to go. So that means we can officially begin, and I can welcome you to this week's live Monday Music Motivation. Today we're going to be talking about a little bit of this idea of flow and how to find a flow state and how to use the actual organization of your practice to get into that flow state more easily. So over this past weekend on Saturday, we had a very fantastic annual. This is, I think, the fourth time it's happened. The enthusiast committee from the International Clarinet Association puts together this online workshop that's kind of a 3-hour event with different breakout rooms, master class, warm-ups, all kind of fun stuff. Those replays and recordings of that are already available on the International Clarinet Association's YouTube channel. So I have a link to that down in the description that you can check out and go watch the replays of that if you weren't able to make it live. If you were able to make it live and there were some other breakout rooms that you wanted to see, all of the breakout rooms are up there now, so you can check those out and get caught up on any of the great sessions that you missed. And we got really good feedback. I think everybody liked any session that they went to, so really all of the sessions are worth digging into. What I'm kind of referencing in today's video is one of the sessions that I wasn't able to attend because I was presenting one of my own, but Lynne Snyder did a session on kind of the practice blueprint and how to organize your practice effectively and organize for the optimal learning and optimal enjoyment as well, which I think is very, very important. So with that idea in mind, I want to talk a little bit about what the flow state is and how organizing your practice appropriately can really help you to find that flow state and stay engaged in the flow state. So what flow is this idea that there's kind of a sweet spot for our brain to be operating at. And even though it's a little bit complicated and there's some nuance to it, I think the basic underlying idea is very straightforward. And that underlying idea is that if you're doing something that's too easy, then it's going to be boring and you're going to sort of check out and it's not going to stick or get very deeply into your brain. If you're doing something that's too hard, you're going to either be learning the wrong information because you're going to be doing it incorrectly, or more likely you're going to get frustrated that you can't do it correctly and quit and give up, therefore not really learning. So even though there's a lot of nuance for how to kind of find that flow state and how to know you're in that flow state, the underlying principle is pretty straightforward. We need to find something in that sweet spot of challenge level where it's mentally engaging and we're interested in doing it, but it's not so easy that it's boring and we don't want to stay engaged with it and keep doing it. And again, obviously, if you find that sweet spot, then you're going to practice for longer and your practice is going to be more productive because you're going to want to keep going and keep solving problems and actually getting those problems solved. And it's a win-win in all the ways when you're in that flow state. Now, the thing that becomes tricky with that is how do we actually find flow on everything that we're doing? And I think there's, in some respects, it's challenging to do that. I was going to say it's impossible. I don't think it's actually impossible. I think it is possible to find the flow state on literally anything that you're doing. Even you can play one note and make it engaging enough that you don't find it too easy and too simple. But that takes a lot of effort and a lot of work to figure out how do I make just playing one note or playing a simple long tone exercise mentally engaging, because on the surface level it is absolutely not very mentally engaging. So this is where Lynne's presentation on the practice blueprint comes in and is really effective and really helpful. Is she organizes practice into these 4 kind of categories that are really helpful. One of the categories is warm-ups, fundamentals, which even though that's kind of an easier one, you still want to be mentally engaged with that. Then you have your flow stuff, the stuff that's kind of at that sweet spot by default. And then you have effortful challenge, and then stuff that you do for fun. And having an organization to that and knowing like these are the things that I'm working on, and these are kind of the spots and how they fit into those categories, makes it so much easier to find that flow state, because you can kind of be rotating through the things. So if you do something that's effortful challenge, and that's getting really hard and getting really frustrating, you can step away from that and be like, nope, this is getting too frustrating. I'm wanting to quit on this. I'm going to go back to something that's in the flow state, or maybe I'll counterbalance it with something that's fun. If you're doing something that's just fun, usually the fun parts are the really easy parts. Or also, when we're thinking about playing for fun, we aren't being as picky, so it's not as mentally engaging for us, because we're just kind of playing through it and enjoying it. You can think of the fun sections as like those favorite sections of your piece that you just always want to play over and over and over again because they sound so good and feel so good. That's an example of a fun section. So you can be doing if you know a section is effortful challenge, you can be doing that effortful challenge, and then as you're starting to get frustrated, back off and be like, no, I'm going to do a fun section now to kind of give my brain a rest. And by organizing your practice that way, you naturally end up in that flow state where you're either playing something that naturally elicits flow. As you get frustrated on something hard, you go back to something easy. As you get bored with one of the fun, easy sections, you can go back to a flow section or an effortful challenge section and keep the brain engaged. And it's actually really remarkable how the brain can kind of process things and overcome things when it's in that kind of sweet spot. I can't remember if we've talked about interleaving on a Monday Music Motivation recently, but this idea of interleaving those 4 sections is where you really get into that sweet spot of flow, because you can literally plan and organize in your practice. I'm going to spend 15 minutes on an effortful challenge hard section, then I'm going to give myself 10 minutes of a break just playing something fun and really enjoying that and not stressing too much, letting my brain relax. And that other part of your brain that was dealing with the effortful challenge in the background will kind of still be processing that and figuring that out. So then after your 10 minutes of fun practice, you go back to the effortful challenge and you'll find that you're able to make more progress. So we can do this where we do just our one section at a time and go in our very linear way, where we engage with it and figure out how to adjust what we're working on, maybe by simplifying the effortful challenge parts so they're in the flow sweet spot, or thinking harder on the long tones and the fun stuff so they're in the effortful kind of flow spot. Or we can just do it by changing the sections that we're working on and changing how we organize our practice as well. So that's just some food for thought. If you're struggling to always be in that flow state and you're thinking, I know I'm supposed to be like enjoying this and solving problems and hearing problems to solve and be mentally engaged with this, but I'm either just getting unbelievably frustrated or it's just way too easy, then jump over to something that's the opposite of that. If it's too easy, do something hard. If it's too hard, do something easy. So on and so forth. I think that hopefully makes sense. And if it doesn't make sense, feel free to leave a comment and let me know if you have any questions about that. But now, before we wrap up, of course, as always, for our Monday Music Motivation, it's time to fill out your practice template. Here's what mine's looking like for this week. You can just recreate this for yourself, organize however you want, or you can download this exact template at quickstartclarinet.com/get-started. And date for the week, reflection of how things are going, goal for what you want to accomplish this week, and your plan for when you're going to make that happen. And then take that plan of what you're going to do, put it into your calendar, set reminders so that you actually show up for that and actually do it. And maybe in your plan, experiment with rotating through those different categories and doing some interleaving of the difficulty of what you're working on. Not just interleaving different sections, not just randomly jumping around, not just linearly starting at the beginning of the piece and working your way through until you make a mistake. Be a little thoughtful of which sections of this piece are going to be fun and easy to play through, which ones are going to be an effortful challenge, and which ones will naturally fall in that flow state. And then you know, if you're feeling frustrated, go to something easier, go to a fun section. If you're feeling a little bored, go to an effortful challenge section, and then you can have that kind of flow state built into the organization of your practice. Again, you can watch Lynne's whole presentation where she explains those 4 states much more detail than I just did at the link in the description. You can also go to the International Clarinet Association's YouTube channel and watch all of the recordings from this last weekend session, which was a ton of fun. Let me know if you have any questions in the comments below. Have a fantastic week of practicing, and I'll see you next week on the next live Monday Music Motivation.